There is a family in Denmark worth more than $20 billion combined. They own the most powerful toy brand on the planet, a company that sells more than 600 plastic brick sets every single second of every single day. Their business survived 2 house fires, a world war, and a near-total collapse that almost wiped it off the map completely. And most people who have built entire childhoods out of their product could not name a single person in the family that owns it. This is the story of a carpenter so poor he sometimes traded toys for food, a son who nearly burned the family home down as a child and later saved the company by walking away from wood entirely, and a grandson who brought the business to the edge of bankruptcy before handing it to a stranger who rebuilt it from nothing. This all started with a struggling carpentry shop in a tiny Danish town called Billund. Ole Kirk Christensen was born on April 7, 1891, in a small farming community in Denmark. He was one of 13 children in a poor household, and from the age of 7, he was already herding sheep and cattle on nearby farms to help his family get by. He trained as a carpenter under his older brother, and eventually earned his journeyman certificate at the age of 20. In 1916, Christensen bought a small woodworking shop in Billund. The business made doors, windows, cabinets, and even coffins. It was steady work until the Great Depression reached Denmark in the early 1930s. Farmers stopped buying furniture and building supplies because they simply had no money left. Christensen laid off staff one by one until his workshop was nearly empty. To survive, he shifted toward cheap, practical products people could still afford. Things like ladders, ironing boards, and small wooden toys carved from leftover birch. His brothers and sisters were not convinced this toy idea would work. When Christensen asked them to help guarantee a loan to keep the business alive, one of them reportedly asked him if he could not find something more useful to do with his time. He ignored the doubt and kept building. That refusal to quit on wooden toys during the worst economic years of the century is the reason any of what comes next happened at all. In 1934, Christensen combined 2 Danish words, leg and godt, meaning play well, and shortened them into a single name for his company. From that point forward, the business was officially called Lego. The name captured exactly what Christensen believed toys were for, and it became the foundation of everything the company would build for the rest of the century. The road to get there was not smooth. In 1924, while Christensen and his wife napped, 2 of his young sons played with the glue heater in the workshop and accidentally started a fire that burned the shop and the family home to the ground. Nobody was hurt, and Christensen rebuilt. Then, in 1942, a short circuit sparked another fire that destroyed the factory completely, along with the stock and the blueprints inside. Christensen nearly gave up on rebuilding a second time, but he felt responsible for the jobs of his employees and pushed forward anyway. By 1944, he had a new factory running with an actual assembly line, something the original workshop never had. Christensen kept the business alive through the Depression, through 2 fires, and through the German occupation of Denmark during the war. What he did not yet have was the product that would turn his small Danish toy company into a global name. That product was still years away, and it would come from a decision Christensen almost did not make. At the end of World War II, wood and metal were still hard to source in large quantities across Europe, so manufacturers everywhere started looking at plastic as a cheaper and more reliable alternative. In 1947, Christensen became the first toy manufacturer in Denmark to purchase a plastic injection molding machine. The machine cost more than double what the company had earned in profit the previous year, which made it a massive financial risk for a business that had already nearly collapsed once. The switch was not easy for Christensen personally either. He had spent his entire working life mastering wood, and now he was being asked to trust a completely different material and process. By the late 1940s, the company was producing around 200 different products in both wood and plastic. And in 1949, it released its first version of a self-locking building brick, a direct early ancestor of the toy the world knows today. Christensen died on March 11, 1958, at the age of 66, just months after his company patented the design that would define it forever. He never got to see how far that patent would carry the business. That responsibility now fell entirely to his son, a man who had literally grown up inside the factory and had strong opinions about exactly what the product needed to become. Godtfred Kirk Christensen was the 3rd of Ole Kirk's 5 children, and he had been involved in the business since he was a young boy, including being partly responsible for the 1924 fire that burned the original workshop down. As an adult, he became his father's closest partner in running the company, and eventually took over full leadership when his father died in 1958. Godtfred is the person most responsible for turning the Lego brick into the product still sold today. He led the development of the stud and tube coupling system, the interlocking design on the underside of every brick that allows pieces to click together securely and still pull apart easily. That system was patented in January 1958, and it has remained essentially unchanged since. Every Lego brick made since that patent is still compatible with every other one, no matter how old. Godtfred also faced his own defining crisis. In February 1960, part of the company's wooden toy factory burned down again. Rather than rebuild the wood division a third time, Godtfred made the call to abandon wooden toys entirely and put the company's full attention behind plastic bricks and what he called the Lego system of play. Two of his own brothers disagreed strongly enough with that decision that they left the company, and Godtfred bought out their shares to become sole owner. That single choice, made the day after a factory fire, is the reason Lego became a brick company instead of a wooden toy company that also happened to make bricks on the side. With the brick locked in as the company's singular focus, Godtfred spent years writing out a detailed set of internal guidelines for how Lego products should be designed and developed, a kind of internal constitution meant to keep quality consistent as the company grew. That discipline paid off. Lego expanded into Germany in 1956 and kept spreading across Western Europe through the following decade. In 1968, the company opened the first Legoland theme park directly in Billund, built almost entirely from Lego bricks, and turning the company's hometown into an actual tourist destination. Godtfred stepped back from day-to-day management in 1973 to become chairman of the board, and a transition period followed as leadership prepared to shift to the next generation. That generation was Godtfred's son, a boy who had literally been photographed on Lego packaging as a child, testing new toy designs before he could even read. His name was Ole Kirk Christensen, and in 1979, he officially became president and chief executive of the Lego Group. Under his leadership, the company would grow into one of the most recognized brands on the planet. But that same growth would eventually push the business closer to collapse than it had ever been, even during the war years his grandfather survived. Ole Kirk Christensen ran Lego from 1979 to 2004, and during that stretch, the company introduced Lego minifigures, licensed franchises, video games, and a huge expansion into new product lines and theme parks around the world. For a long time, this expansion worked. But by the early 2000s, Lego had grown into a company managing more than 13,000 different product pieces and elements, along with theme parks, clothing lines, and publishing ventures that had almost nothing to do with the core brick business. The financial damage built quietly, and then all at once. By 2003, Lego was reportedly losing close to $1 million a day. Sales had fallen roughly 30% in a single year, and the company was carrying around $800 million in debt. Analysts genuinely believed the company could be facing bankruptcy within about 18 months if nothing changed. For a company that had never posted a loss since its founding decades earlier, this was the most dangerous moment in its entire history. Christensen tried to steer the company through the early stages of this crisis himself, cutting jobs and trimming product lines. But the situation kept getting worse. In 2004, he made the decision to step down as chief executive and hand control to someone from outside the family for the very first time in the company's history. That decision, as difficult as it must have been for a third-generation owner, is arguably what saved the entire business. Jürgen Wieg Knudstorp was a 35-year-old former McKinsey consultant who had joined Lego a few years earlier as director of strategy. In 2003, he presented the board with a blunt internal assessment, describing the company as being on what he called a burning platform, warning that Lego was running out of cash and might not survive without immediate and drastic change. A year later, the board trusted him with the top job. Knudstorp's fix was almost stubbornly simple. Instead of chasing new markets or launching new ventures, He sold off the theme parks, shut down the publishing division, cut the video game business down to licensing deals instead of in-house development, and slashed the product catalog nearly in half, from around 13,000 pieces down to roughly 7,000. The entire strategy centered on one question, which was figuring out what people actually loved about LEGO in the first place. The answer kept coming back to the same thing: the brick itself and the open-ended creativity it allowed. The turnaround worked, and it worked fast by corporate standards. By 2006, profit margins had climbed back into healthy territory, and by 2015, LEGO had overtaken Mattel to become the largest toy company in the world by sales. The company that had nearly gone bankrupt a decade earlier was now being studied in business schools as one of the great corporate recoveries of the era. And through all of it, the Kirk Christensen family never lost ownership of the company they had built from a wooden workshop in a poor Danish farming town. LEGO has remained privately owned by the Kirk Christensen family for its entire history, and it still is today. The family holds its ownership through a holding company called Kirkby, which controls 75% of LEGO, with the remaining 25% held by the nonprofit LEGO Foundation. Kirkby also holds a large stake in Merlin Entertainments, the company behind Legoland parks, Madame Tussauds, and the London Eye, along with a wide portfolio of other investments in real estate and renewable energy. In 2023, the family completed a planned handover from the third generation to the fourth. Kjeld Kirk Christensen stepped back from his leadership role at Kirkby, passing the chairmanship to his son, Thomas Kirk Christensen, who now also chairs the LEGO Group board itself. Thomas shares ownership evenly with his two sisters and his father, and together, their combined fortune has been estimated at around $25 billion, making them one of the wealthiest families in the world, and by far the richest in Denmark. Despite that scale of wealth, the family keeps an extremely low public profile. There are no shareholder calls, no public stock listings, and very few interviews. LEGO today generates well over $12 billion in annual revenue and sells north of 70 billion bricks a year, produced across factories on multiple continents. It is a business empire built entirely on a single interlocking piece of plastic, still owned by the descendants of the man who once traded handmade wooden toys for food to feed his family. This story is not a smooth climb from a small carpentry shop to a global empire. It runs through two fires that burned the family's workshop and home to the ground. It runs through a father who nearly gave up on toys entirely, and a son who burned down part of that same workshop as a child, before eventually saving the company by giving up wood for good. It runs through a third-generation owner who grew the business bigger than it had ever been, and then watched it nearly collapse under its own weight, only to hand the keys to a stranger with no family name attached, who rebuilt the whole thing from the ground up. Every brick sitting in a bin in your house right now is the product of that entire chain of decisions, failures, and second chances. Ole Kirk Christensen taught himself carpentry because his family was too poor to give him many other options. His son perfected a tiny interlocking design that never needed to change again. His grandson grew the company until it almost broke, then had the humility to let someone else save it. The family that owns LEGO today still keeps almost everything about their private lives exactly that, private, while their product sits in nearly every home with children on the planet. If you got something out of this video, consider subscribing. It takes just 3 seconds and it helps us continue creating content like this.